I think it has been difficult several years for, in relation to the question of nuclear development in North Korea. And most recently, last year, we had military provocations by North Korea. And also, North Korea apparently has been developing HEU facility as well. So one may have to ask what objective six-party talks have served, because this type of situation we clearly wanted to avoid. But in the absence of the meetings in six-party talks, we have witnessed all these military provocations and new development regarding nuclear development on the part of North Korea. I have a very strong concern about the current situation, because we all know that 2012 we will have the political changes in the nations in the region, including the United States. The United States is going through the presidential election. Korea will have the presidential election. China, there is going to be the change of political leadership. North Korea may most probably go through this transition of power from the current Kim Jong-il regime to the next generation. So 2012, we may be watching a very domestically oriented policies in those nations. Therefore, this coming 1.5 years will be very critical moment of time for the question of nuclear development. Six-party talks have made certain agreements. In particular, in 2005, six nations committed to denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and also they talked about various elements which would eventually lead to a comprehensive settlement. The denuclearization is clearly the center of it, and the establishment of peace regime, normalization of the relationship between the United States and DPRK, Japan and DPRK, and also economic and energy cooperation. Those four elements clearly are considered as the central elements for comprehensive settlement. I do not consider that we can address each issue piece by piece. There would have to be a kind of comprehensive one-go package needs to be worked out. For that, there is a need for a real negotiation. Six-party talks at this juncture may not be the right format for creating a breakthrough, creating a comprehensive settlement. Six-party talks continue to be important format, because six-party talks include all the nations who are concerned about Northeast Asia security. Therefore, we must maintain that. But leading to the six-party talks, we do need very intensive bilateral talks. That's what I feel at this juncture. Parallel bilateral talks between North and South, United States and North, Japan and North, would have to be based upon one clear assumption. The clear assumption be a very close coordination, consultation between the three nations, United States, South Korea and Japan. Without that sort of consultation, there would be sort of a conflict of interest or room for North Korea to manipulate differences which may arise out of the bilateral negotiations. So, but I do feel that recently there has been a very close coordination indeed taking place between Japan, United States and South Korea, particularly under the current South Korean president. Three nations more or less pursuing the same goal, same policy. There may be a difference in terms of the precise item, but yet I think it can be overcome by close consultation, coordination. One of the questions we need to be asking to ourselves being people, I mean the governments in three nations, are the objective of negotiation. Some of public intellectual in the United States talk about the priorities on part of the United States. The priority may be the proliferation, counter-proliferation aspect, meaning that what the United States is keenly interested in is not at this juncture denuclearization, but more to do with the counter-proliferation, meaning that the nuclear devices technology should not be transferred to the third nation, the nations in Middle East or the terrorist group, sort of thing. Nation like Japan clearly wish to place the utmost emphasis on denuclearization because that is a root cause of everything. Therefore, let us not make a sort of half-boiled attitude vis-à-vis this question of nuclear development. Those type of sort of fine details of the real objective needs to be consulted and coordinated prior to the bilateral negotiations. Crucial importance is to make sure that China recognizes the situation as it is, and we have to provide China a very clear message. We cannot have a luxury of sort of just living in a status quo. The current military provocations and also HEU development. North Korea is also developing their missile technology as well. And South Korean government has already made clear to the world that one more provocation will be received with much harsher response on the part of South Korea. What is important for us, for the United States, Korea and Japan, is to prepare for the worst scenario, because the military provocation, if it prolongs, would have to be met with harsher responses that may lead to the conflicts. And we must be prepared for dealing with those conflicts. We did engage in the same exercise in 1994 when there was the first nuclear crisis surrounding North Korea. Japan and the United States made all the sort of contingency planning. We expected the United States to send reinforcements to the Japanese base in Japan, about, 250 fighter airplanes would have to be additionally sent to Japan to cope with the possible situation on the peninsula. At that time, North Korea declared that implementation of economic sanction should be considered as declaration of war. We didn't have that intention at all, but yet we were preparing for economic sanctions. But yet, given the announcement on the part of North Korea, we had to make a contingency plan. And we sort of engaged in very tough exercise of the contingency planning. And we very much wanted to have South Korea join in it. But yet South Korea did not wish to join in this exercise of the contingency planning. The contingency planning is the military plan, but at the same time it's non-military plan, like the how to cope with refugees, how to deal with the evacuation of nationals, our nationals, and all sorts of things. So this time, again, suppose that the North Korea were to launch the third nuclear testing, we would have to call for a tough measure on the part of United Nations Security Council. And we, depending upon the response on the part of North Korea, it would lead to the situation where we may expect a conflict. So the preparedness is a strong deterrence power. So, but by us preparing for that, will make a clear signal to China that indeed this is a serious thing. China doesn't want to see a collapse of North Korea. China doesn't want to see a further development of nuclear weapon on the part of North Korea. Then China would have to act. And we would have to send a very, very clear message to China. We are serious. We are determined to cope with this question of North Korea. If China considers the situation very tense, very risky, then China needs to act. Action has to be the persuasion of North Korea, because China has indeed certain leverage against North Korea, because China supports North Korea through economic and financial means. So I think China must be aware of the determination on the part of the three nations. And by the way, we have seen a bit of controversy in relation to the self-assertiveness on the part of China recently. And we would very much like to see a more liberal, constructive China. And the question of North Korea may be one of the test cases for China to demonstrate to the world if China is a constructive entity or not. So those type of things China needs to recognize. For the outside world to intervene into the domestic process, the domestic situation in North Korea. North Korea is a very peculiar case because all the information is being cut. Those ordinary people do not have access to information regarding international situation. Currently we have seen all this popular movement in the Middle East, but I do not consider that North Korean people are aware of those sort of public movement in the Middle East. So there is a very severe limitation for the rest of the world to make influence over the future of domestic regime in North Korea. But yet, again, the comprehensive settlement, if we were able to achieve vis-à-vis North Korea regarding denuclearization, this does mean that North Korea is bound to change their policies. And when you talk about economic cooperation, energy cooperation, normalization of relationship, it does mean that North Korea is bound to have foreign elements inside their society. Therefore, like it or not, North Korea would have to be a little bit more open to the rest of the world. Then I think that will lead to some type of changes in the domestic regime in North Korea.